Hello everyone. Today we are starting with environment subject. As we have seen other subjects, we'll make the environment as simple as possible. So only request is be calm, composed, take the pen and paper, sit with the pen and paper for the session. Whatever I say you, focus on it, practice by pausing the video. By the end of the series, you will be thorough with environment in the view of mains. Only thing, calm and relaxed. Take the pen and paper, practice. See, the problem will look simple if you see or look at it simple. If you make it complicated, it will obviously become a complicated problem, right? Make it simple or take it simple. Okay, we'll take it simple and we'll make it simple. So under environment, we have certain topics. Everything is linked. Before even getting into the main portion, I'll just give a summary of the environment chapter. So what are we going to study from environment? What not should be prepared for the mains examination? If you think like that, one major topic, climate change. What is climate change? How is it happening? What are the COPs? How many COPs has been happened? And what is the upcoming COP? What might be the discussion topics? Everything under this climate change we will discuss. In depth we will discuss about COP28 because it is a recently held, and we will be having COP29 in 2022 to November 11 to 22, I hope. Yeah, so in depth we will read about COP28 so that we will be able to answer most of the questions, where they will be discussing about losses and damage fund, global goal on adaptation, India adaptation efforts and investment, linking climate action with nature conservation, etc. will be under COP28. So one topic is climate change. So next topic, if you see in the environment, mostly we'll be talking about ecosystems. Different ecosystems you will be understanding. So when you understand ecosystem, you will also come across the term called wetlands. So you'll understand what is wetland, issues with that, and what about mangroves, what about coral reefs. So once you cover all these things, you will also be covering biodiversity. What is biodiversity? What are the included conferences that are already happened? All those things will be studying. Then comes, because we know the importance of species in the biodiversity, we will be going for species protection programs. We will be reading about it. So under that we will be having many projects like Project Tiger, Cheetah, etc. etc. Then we will go with the next chapter. It will be like we are damaging biodiversity, and the term will say pollution. We are polluting air, water, land degradation, all those things, and what are the different measures we are taking up so that we will not pollute it, right? So that is one. And also under pollution only we will be seeing waste to wealth management, right? Waste management. So under that we will be seeing about plastic, e-waste, municipal solid waste, etc. Then under pollution only we would have seen about carbon credit, green credit, etc. Okay. So finally we will be going for environment impact assessment. If you are done with this, you are done with the environment chapter. That's all for environment. So we'll just repeat what not we are going to see. We will be looking into, so we are going to deal with climate change, COP28 in depth, COP29 in future. Then we will be dealing about different aspects of COP28. Then about ecosystem, wetland, mangroves, corals. Later on biodiversity and species conservation. Then on pollution, green credit, carbon credit, then waste to wealth management, and later we'll be talking about environment impact assessment. So that's all for climate or environment subject. So if you can carefully follow the series alone, you will be able to tackle all the questions, and I'll teach how to tackle as well. So let us start. First you should be knowing what is the term means the climate change. The meaning of term climate change. Actually, it refers to long-term shift in temperature and weather. Okay, it's a long-term shift in temperature and weather. So when you talk about weather, you will be talking mostly on rainfall, snow, wind pattern, etc., which is directly or indirectly attributed by humans or caused by anthropogenic activities. See, it is a long-term shift in temperature and weather because of human activities. That we say it as anthropogenic activity that alters the composition of global atmosphere, causing natural climate variability observed over a comparable period like hundreds of years. So this is the first definition you should be knowing. Whenever there is a term about climate change, you should be knowing it is a long-term impact one which is causing a shift in temperature and weather patterns, right? Because of human activities or because of anthropogenic activities, which will cause change in the global atmosphere, causing natural climate variability, which is observed over comparable period. That is called as climate change. If you know this climate change, we can go for some other important terms. Just keep in mind these terms, whatever I say now. There are some four terms. I will ask you to repeat these terms again and again. So just keep in mind. I will say way to use. One term is adaptation. What is adaptation? Adaptation is you are anticipating some adverse effect and you are trying to take appropriate measure so that you will be protected later. Okay, for example, you will be building a large infrastructures, or you will be going for wooden infrastructure whenever there is possibility of tsunamis nearby. So those kind of things you are going to adapt. You know, you are anticipating that change will happen, that climate change will happen, and hence you are kind of modifying your behavior also. So you are changing your life also. So that is called as adaptation. You are adapting to whatever change that is going to happen. How about mitigation? So it means making the impact of climate change less severe by preventing or reducing the emission of a greenhouse gases. See, if there is some possibility to change whatever the action is going to happen, that is mitigation before happening. Or if you are like, okay, I can't change, it is anyway going to happen, you fix that, you are anticipating it, then you go for adaptation. Okay, so if you are able to change or you are adapting to change that impact, then it is called as adaptation. Or if you want to prevent it to happen, then it is called as mitigation. Then we have one more term, that is loss and damage. So it's actually a general term used in UN climate negotiations. What it actually refers is, it's a consequence of climate change that go beyond what people can adopt. You can't even adapt. One thing I told, to prevent we go for mitigation. So if we can't prevent, then we just try to adjust ourselves so that we can tackle the impact, that is adaptation. But you can't even adopt it. Or when options exist but a community does not have the resource to access or utilize them because of lack of resources or because you can't adopt. Loss and damage can result from both extreme weather events like cyclones, droughts and heat waves, as well as slow onset changes such as sea level rise, desertification, etc. So it is going beyond the adaptation, then you call it as loss and damage. Okay. So loss and damages are linked to adaptation and mitigation because it happens when efforts to reduce emissions are not ambitious enough, and when adaptation efforts are unsuccessful or impossible to implement. See, if you are able to prevent, you will prevent. That is mitigation. Okay, you can't prevent, then you are kind of adjusting your lifestyle so that you will somehow face it. That is adaptation. You can't even adapt to whatever consequences that is happening, then it is called as loss and damage. Then the last term we have climate budget. So it's actually a governance system that helps cities integrate climate change into their policies, actions. spending decisions, etc. So you will make it into a part of your policies governance, okay, climate budget. So to mitigate or whatever to do with the climate change. It's a way to turn medium and long term climate commitments into measurable actions. Your commitments are converted to actions through climate budget. So that can be funded in short term, okay. Climate budget can also help cities identify areas for improvement and stay on track with their climate goals. So if you are going from commitment to action, it is called as climate budget. Now we learned 4 terms. One is adaptation, mitigation, loss and damage, climate budget. These are the 4 terms you should keep in mind. And now we'll get into the actual syllabus, okay. So climate change. We already understood what is climate change. It's a long-term variability in temperature and weather because of human activities or anthropogenic activities. So which is causing so much of changes in atmosphere, etc., etc. Okay, we understood it's a long-term climate change. That's what a definition we already completed. Now what happens? What is the impact? If climate change is happening, you should be knowing impact. See, you remember one point. Whenever we are speaking about agriculture, we always used to go for one data point. What are the challenges? What are the initiatives? What are the way forward? That was the structure. Now in climate change or environment, we must focus on at least key terms, definitions, and impact. Impact is more important. Impact, and also we have certain laws, acts, etc. I'll say, but impact is one of the key terms. You remember this, okay? Impact of climate change. Now we'll see how will it impact. There are different sections where you can read. One is heat related impacts, weather pattern related, wild fires and marine life, carbon sinks, ice shelves, then socio-economic impact. These are some of the impacts we should be able to focus. One is, see, whenever you talk about climate change, we most stress on global temperature rise, isn't it? Heat related impacts we'll see now. Increased frequency and severity of heat waves. You have heard about heat waves? What are heat waves? Which are very dry and which are very hot, fast. Those are heat waves. Australia 2019 and 20 it experienced, in California 2020 and in Siberia also. So they have experienced. You can remember at least 1 or 2 examples, at least one example for each point, okay. So increased frequency and severity of heat waves. What happens? Even in India we have seen heat waves where some of the vehicles got burnt and also crops got burnt, right? If you can note those regions, good. Otherwise you just remember Australia in 2019-20 or California in 2020, okay. Increased severity and frequency. Frequency is very frequent, it is now. It is not once in a while, very frequent and very severe comparatively. So these are like terms should be used. Frequency and severity of heat waves will be increasing. Next, if you see, that is on land. Now if you see on marine heat waves, IPCC. So comment below what is IPCC. It is well known thing, but I won't say, you comment below. IPCC special report on the ocean and cryosphere in a changing climate on marine heat waves. So under IPCC has released one report, it seems. So on what? Ocean. One is on ocean. One is on cryosphere. What is cryosphere? So this is ice. Mountain covered by ice. This is called glaciers and all. Cryosphere. In a changing climate on marine heat waves. So there is a report on ocean and cryosphere in changing climate change. So it says marine heat waves also got increased and it is causing more damage. IPCC report is there, okay. So one more heat, if you see, urban heat islands. You would have read about this concept. where because of use of more iron, steel and all in the construction, even in the black tar and all, so urban has become like a heat island. More heat is captured by those metals, because of which it is experiencing more heat. So that is called as a urban heat island. Okay, so these are the three major things. One is on severity and frequency got increased. One more, marine heat waves are also improved or increased. Then if you see, there is a concept of urban heat islands. Heat related things, you must remember the point, because then again and again I will be asking you to say the points. Okay. Next, if you see weather patterns, impact on weather patterns, Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, then more severe cyclonic storms. So you can just remember at least weather pattern shift and severe cyclonic storms, and even tropical cyclones like Cyclone Vayu in 2019. Tropical cyclones were restricted to Gujarat earlier, but now affect Karnataka and Kerala even. Why? Why? Because of weather pattern change, because of a climate change. So you can at least mention cyclones and shift in weather pattern, which is also shifting in ocean circulation as well. You can mention that as well. So weather pattern shift, overturning circulation. So overturning circulation where? Atlantic. Then we have cyclone. Weather pattern, remember to say about these two. You can even say some other points which I will be mentioning in moving forward. Okay. Next, wild fires. Increased incidence of wildfires. We have seen Amazon wildfire, even Indonesia, even India. So wildfires are increasing. One such is zombie fire. Okay. Marine, sea level rise and coastal flooding. We already seen on cryogenic, right? So whenever those ice melt, sea level will rise and coastal flooding will be obviously there. Okay. Then we have carbon sinks concept. If you see, this is getting deteriorated because of climate change and because we are making deforestation and all. Carbon sinks are deteriorating. And then ocean deoxygenation is happening. Even in ocean, it is deoxygenation is happening. Okay, both in ocean and land, we are deteriorating the carbon sinks. So because of climate change, is one more impact. Then if you say ice shelves, sinking cryosphere, already I mentioned. That's why I told the keyword cryosphere, sinking cryosphere. Khumbu Glacier in the Himalayas may disappear entirely by 2100 is a one study says. So now at least you remember Khumbu Glacier, which is in Himalayan region, India. Okay, why I am saying one thing is whenever you talk about cryogenic, you can mention Khumbu Glacier. One more thing is Khumbu Glacier is in from which country? If it is one of the question in prelims, you will be able to answer. So that's how you should be integratedly preparing. Okay, Khumbu Glacier will disappear entirely in 2100. Okay, bye. Then we have Arctic amplification is also happening. So there also amplification is happening. Where? Arctic. Then if you see socio-economic, we know these days climate migration has become more. Economic losses are there. Cost of carbon emission is $86 per ton of $86 per ton of a carbon dioxide. So social cost also is there and economic is also there. Food and health security at risk. Ammonia volatilization is one such. Okay, food and health security issues also are there. Then if you see children, 1 in 7 children globally are exposed to at least 5 major climate and environmental hazards. So if you make 7 members stand in a line, 1 among 7 children, 1 is exposed to the climate hazards. Women, 80% of people displaced by climate change are women. Most of the gender, I mean most of the people who got affected is women actually, 80%. It's a data. So now if you see, we'll see, right? So now if you see what are the impacts, you got to know what are the impacts. First thing is, see, whenever you talk about climate change, you should be talking about heat related issues. We have seen urban heat islands, increased frequency and severity. Marine heat waves are also increased heat waves. So marine heat waves. Then we have seen weather patterns, cyclones particularly, and then the circulation pattern got disturbed. Then we have wildfires, marine life. Then carbon sinks also getting deteriorated. Ice shelves are melting. In that we learned Khumbu Glacier. Okay. Then even in socio-economic impact, we must mostly talking about migration. So climate migration is an economic loss is there. Food, health, nutrition problem. Children and women. So we have spoke about all those things. So again we are just saying, I didn't show here the important terms, right, which already we discussed. Adaptation, mitigation, loss and damage, climate budget. So we already read, so I am not repeating it. So now we'll enter COP28. Focus on it very much because year after we'll be, most of the syllabus is part of COP28. We'll be studying it in depth. Okay, for mains you have to use most of the points from COP28 as your answer subheadings. Okay, we'll start with COP28. What is COP28? This much knowledge you should be having. Conference of Parties. This is for what? To discuss about climate change and all, right? Now you should be knowing the sequence. When did this climate change, adaptation and these things has been started? When UN adopted all these things? When COP has started? What was the first report? These are all the prelims portion that you should be aware of. So I'll take a separate class on this for prelim series. But for mains that is not much required. That's why I'm not using it here. However, you have to focus on that also as your assignment. Either you do it by personally or wait until I start a series on environment prelims perspective. Okay. So we'll start with COP28. So it was the 2023 United Nations Climate Change Conference. When did it happen? 2023. Climate Change Conference. It took place in Dubai, United Arab Emirates from November 30 to December 12. Okay, in the month of November it has been taken place. Next year, I mean this year 2024 also will be having in the month of November only. Hopefully, yeah. So yes, so you can have at least whenever you talk about COP28, you can talk. This has been held in the year 2023 in Dubai, United Arab Emirates, or in the month of November and December, right? By United Nations Climate Change Conference. So we'll see context of COP28. Unprecedented climate crisis in 2023. Discontent of the Association of Small Island States. Need for substantial emission reduction. So these were the main context of COP28. Okay, unprecedented climate crisis. What is it? So 2023 was the hottest year on the record, breaking numerous global temperature records. Okay, over 80 days in 2023 saw temperature at least 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial level. These conditions highlighted the urgent need for the significant climate change. So there was unprecedented climate crisis, hottest year. Okay, so if you can't write all the terms, not required. If you can mention this unprecedented climate crisis in 2023, it went beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial level. These points are sufficient for the first point. But you have to take your pen, note this, the term unprecedented climate crisis in 2023. Okay. Then we have discontent of Association of Small Island State. So actually, this Association of Small Island State emphasized the need for transformative changes rather than incremental adjustment. So what they say is the course correction that were needed have not been secured. We have made incremental advancement over business as usual when what we really needed was an exponential leap in our action and support. So we really need other transformational changes, not small incremental changes at this time. That is a concern about association of small island states. Okay, the need for substantial emission reduction. So IPCC called for minimum 43% reduction in greenhouse gas emission by 2030 based on 2019 levels. So there is need for substantial emission reduction also. That was also a point of context of COP28. We are achieving a target of reducing 1.5 degrees Celsius, right? Or making like not moving beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius, not reducing actually. We should not go beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius. Okay, these were the three contexts. Unprecedented climate crisis. Actually, it's a crisis. That's why I'm again and again stressing. Just note this word, climate crisis. It moved beyond 1.5 degree. We had a plan to go below 1.5 degree Celsius climate change or temperature rise. Need for substantial emission reduction also was there. So that was also under discussion. Also, like associations of small island states were not happy with incremental changes. Rather, they expect transformative changes. So these were the main things. Okay. Now I will show. If you see the chart here. So if you see the chart here, you can see at least some of the targets mentioned. Right. So in 2018 we have Talanoa Dialogue and adaptation of a Paris rule book. 2019 UNSG Summit September 2023 on 23rd September, COP25 November. Then we have different like in 2020 we had nationally determined commitments and all, right? So till 2050 we are planning for net zero emissions, right? So you just have a flow chart now. I will say what to practice, when to practice. For now we'll go for next heading. So now we have seen the what is climate change, what are the impacts, and we'll see global stock take. So first you should be knowing this term. What is global stock take? Stock take. So they say it as a GST also. Actually, it's a process that assesses the world's progress on climate change and informs countries on how to improve their climate action plans. So we'll see what is the word progress on climate change tackling. So then mentioning like process, words progress on climate change and what to improve, all this as a heading. You can just mention global stock take. Okay, stock take. So this is how you should be practicing key terms. This is one such. So we'll see the progress and what should be improved. So if you see overall progress and goal, mitigation and adaptation, we can see the progress. There is a mitigation measures taken up, adaptation measures as well. But global, this Paris agreement, this is not on the track. So Paris agreement goals has been not met. So this is one of the key term to note. Okay, overall progress, Paris agreement goal has been, it is not on track. Okay. Then if you see climate change impact, record warmth. I already told climate crisis. We have seen here, right? The term unprecedented climate crisis. Yeah, that is what is a global warmth. Warmest year in 2023. So we didn't progress is what it says. Accelerating impacts, it is rapidly increasing. These impacts are rapidly increasing. Then if you see action commitment, so it is a critical decade, very important decade where we have to take the action accurately and accelerate our action, improve action. And one term, important term to be noted is equity and responsibility. See here, not equality, it is equity. Equity and responsibility. That means differential responsibility is there. For developing countries it is different. For developed countries it is different. For underdeveloped it is different. That is called as a differentiated responsibility or equity and responsibility. Okay. So action commitment. Then implementation of a Paris Agreement. According to Article 2 and Paragraph 2 of this, it should be implemented according to the equity. So the same thing. This differentiated responsibility is needed according to Paris Agreement itself. So then enabler of climate action. So finance, if you talk, capacity building, technology transfer is still needed. It is happening but needed. Then IPCC. So I will say of International Panel on Climate Change. 6th assessment report findings. It also finded certain figures we will see from the report. Global warming caused by human activities. So the global warming is caused by human activities, principally through emissions of greenhouse gases. Right. Then we have regional impact. So vulnerable population are the most affected. Key term. Who are the most affected? Vulnerable population. So like tribals or the island peoples, those are the most affected. So vulnerable population most affected. Adaptation responses, it is fragmented, incremental. For this only we have seen one point here. So what was that? Discontent of the association of small island states. Why? Because we don't want incremental change now. We really want transformational changes, but we are just going through incremental changes. That's the point, which is fragmented also. So it is not going to have much impact. Then financing needs are also there. Increased financing for adaptation and mitigation. Yes, it is happening. Capital availability sufficient, but barrier exist. There are still barriers. For whom? For what? Those things. Like there is sufficient global capital to close the investment gap, but barriers exist in redirecting capital to climate action. Okay. So this has to be again financing has to be improved. These are the some of the list of global stock take. Okay. So if you see other things under COP28, we have to go for collective progress. What kind of progress? Collective progress. On what we should focus? Now comes the key terms. We should focus on mitigation as well as adaptation. So if you see mitigation, only reduction of 2%. Not in line with the Paris goal, as we already seen. It is not in line with the Paris goal. Adaptation, need of universal coverage of early warning system. So some countries are having advantage of early warning system that they have developed, but some other countries it is not there. So we have to take care of those also. Okay. Then adaptation committee, deputation committee, the least developed countries expert group, and Nairobi work program. These are some of the things we should be noting under adaptation. Why? Because to adapt to climate change. So it is adaptation committee. These are all set up by UNFCCC. Okay. United Nations Framework on Climate Change, right? Okay. So these are some of the committees on adaptation. Then we have even should be planned for national adaptation plans. Okay. Then if you see means of implementation. So what are the means we want to implement? We wanted first thing, finance is needed, funds are needed. Then technology should be there. Then skilled human power should be there. Also cooperation and collaboration is very, very, very important, at least in climate change, which is required everywhere. But climate change, you can't say in India it is less polluted, or in US it is more. It's all connected, one globe. It's one globe. So international cooperation is needed to adopt the, or to change the, or to implement it properly, the policies, etc. So if you see finance, developing countries needs estimated 5.8 to 5.9 trillion dollar for pre-2030. We need 5.8 to 5.9 trillion dollars by end of or pre of 2030 for our adaptation and implementation. Adaptation finance estimated 215 to 387 billion annually until 2030. Trillion for 2030, pre-2030. If it is only adaptation, it is 215 to 387 billion dollars. Okay. Clean energy investment is needed. Around that USD 4.3 trillion per year until 2030, increasing to USD 5 trillion per year until 2050. If you can't remember everything, at least remember we want 5.8 to 5.9 trillion for pre-2030. Also adaptation financial estimates also needed, and clean energy investments also needed. Then we can talk about Green Climate Fund. Pledges amounting to USD 12.833 billion. USD 100 billion goal not met in 2021. We can mention this is even not met. Okay, they didn't give this 100 billion goal has been not reached. So now we have to say about at least 4 different. One is developing countries, how much they need, 5.8 to 5.9 trillion per pre-2030. Adaptation finance, we need climate energy investment, clean energy investment. We are going for renewable energy, right? Because we want to reduce emissions. Then we want green climate fund. Okay. Next, if you say technology, progress of technology mechanism is needed. Technology mechanism initiative on AI, that is artificial intelligence. We have to use artificial intelligence for climate change. Technology executive committee, climate technology and network joint work programs are there. That has to work accordingly so that we are getting the technical support. So for development and technology development and for the transfer also. What are those committees? Technology Executive Committee and Climate Technology and Network Joint Work Program. Okay. Climate Technology and Network Joint Work Program. So these are the things under technology. So if you see capacity building, local communities and indigenous people's platforms role should be there. Local community and indigenous people should be participated there. Acknowledges persistent gaps in capacity. Need to acknowledge the gaps in the capacity. And also encourage Paris Committee on Capacity Building. Right. Okay. In implementing the Paris Agreement, we know that. So we have to recognize local communities and indigenous people platform role in enhancing the capacity of indigenous peoples and local community in the Paris Agreement process. So these are some of the things under capacity building. Now if you see international cooperation, so active engagement of non-party stakeholders is also needed. C notes that the 6th assessment report of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change state that international cooperation is a critical enabler for achieving ambitious climate action and encouraging development and implementation of a climate policies. So we need a collaboration. So recognize the importance of a international collaboration. Okay. So those are things. If you see key outcomes of COP28, you just have to practice these things because in depth we are going to study about it. So now take the pen and paper, sit back and just practice this. One is face down of a coal. So coal use should be face down. 2. Face up of a coal. tripling renewable energy. Clean energy fund we were talking. Tripling renewable energy. Then we have transitioning away from fossil fuels. So phase down coal. Transition from fossil fuels. Accelerating low emission technology. So tripling renewable energy and accelerating low emission technology. Accelerating and reducing non-carbon dioxide emissions. So reducing other carbon dioxide also emissions. Okay. Phasing out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. Inefficient fossil fuel subsidies should be phased out. Then accelerating reduction from road transport emissions. Then we have achieving net zero emission strategy. Finally achieving net zero emission strategy. Now you understand. See how many are there? 3, 2. 8 are there. COP28 we have 8 outcomes. So now 8 outcomes you should be saying one by one without looking into the screen. We'll see how to say this. For this I will frame a short story. So you just imagine a scene witnessing all the changes happening in front of you. So I'll say a fun story now. You suddenly see a coal mine being phased down. So now no coal mines on the earth. That is phased down of a coal. Then immediately this coal mines are phased down. You can see 3 suns in the sky representing renewable energy appear, signaling tripling of renewable energy. So 3 sun, tripling renewable energy. So what happens? Suddenly, because of which 3 suns came, right? Because of which you will suddenly see all fossil fuels turn into plants. Transition away from fossil fuels. All fossil fuels turn into plants. Oh, it's so nice. Then what you see, you look around you and you see that electric cars, wind turbines and solar panels getting faster and better. That means accelerating low emission technology. Now it's like already coal mines are closed, 3 suns are there, so that tripling renewable energy happened. And then plants are grown out of fossil fuels. That is transition away from the fossil fuel. And also you have seen so many electric vehicles and all. That is accelerating low emission technology. Solar panels, everything were there. So what nearby farmer was seeing, he saw all the changes and he also started closing methane gas leaks. And he also started reducing the carbon dioxide emission. That is accelerating and reducing non-carbon dioxide emissions. Non-carbon dioxide also. He started closing the methane gas leaks and reducing emissions. Okay. Even it is non-carbon dioxide reduction happened. So even farmer changed. Then what happened? Farmer also changed. Government officer came. And he was like, see, hereafter we'll be not giving any subsidies. Even farmer got changed. Other people got changed. We can't give a subsidy. So phasing out of inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. Then what happened? On the road, okay, while he was going on the road, all cars switch into electric, reducing emission from the transport. So there are no cars also which are emitting. So he should come by car, right? When he was going back, he saw everything is again, it's like electrical vehicles. There is no transport emissions. And finally, you reach a scale that balances emissions with a carbon reduction. So emissions with a carbon reduction, which is balanced. It's net zero. Achieve net zero emissions. This is how you can remember. Okay? So simple. See what happened? Why I am stressing this point is because in your answer writing, you can use anywhere one of the key outcome of COP28 as an heading. You can write any of this. That's why I am emphasizing here. It's like all coal mines are closed or phased down, because of which 3 suns came in the sky, that is tripling the renewable energy, and because of which all fossil fuels turn into plants, that is transition away from fossil fuels. because that is also turned. Now if you can see, look around, there are wind, solar panels, all these things, that is accelerating low emission technology. And even farmers are, see, they all change. Even I will change. I won't even emit more of methane. I will close everything. So accelerating and reducing even non-carbon dioxide emissions. And then once the government officers seen this, even farmer has stopped. Then we have to stop the subsidy for inefficient fossil fuels. While going back, he took a car. Everything is electrical vehicles. He saw reduction in transport emission also. Finally, we achieved net zero emission, where emission is balanced with reduction. Okay, these are all the 8 key outcomes of COP28. Now we will see key negotiations at COP28. What kind of negotiation did we do? If you see that, so historical context is one of the point. In that, COP decisions, first mention of a fossil fuel at COP28. Fossil fuels had never been explicitly mentioned in COP decision, but for the first time, COP28, they have mentioned fossil fuels explicitly. Previous agreements, including the Paris Agreement, focused on reducing greenhouse gas emission without addressing fossil fuel sources. So they also focused on greenhouse gas emission, but they didn't talk about fossil fuels. Now they spoke explicitly. Then if you see COP28 agreement, acknowledgement of fossil fuels. Role of fossil fuels in climate change, they acknowledged. Okay. Then commitment to transition. So that is transition commitment. Net zero by 2050. No specific target. So the agreement called for countries to contribute to transitioning away from fossil fuels to achieve net zero emission by 2050. So specific target is not there. By 2050 you have to. Language softening also. So that is softened language. The term phase out was replaced with transition away from fossil fuels. Phase out, than phase out, they used transition away. See here we have seen. What is this? Phase out we didn't say. Mines, it is phased out. Phase down. What about this? Softened language, they use transitioning away from fossil fuels. Okay, that is one thing. Technology deployment emphasizes renewable, nuclear and CCS. Okay. So what is CCS? Carbon capture and storage. Carbon capture and storage, CCS. Okay. Then we have technology deployment. Already I said this. That is we should be emphasizing on renewable, nuclear and carbon capture. Then we have just transition. Call for equitable transition, end to subsidies. Okay, that is just orderly and equitable transition away from fossil fuels and phasing out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. Why I made you practice? This is the reason. We are keep on repeating. Okay, so whatever I say, you just sit with paper and pen and practice. So there are some reactions of disappointment. Small island state. We have read, right, discontent of a small island states. What was that? The Association of a Small Island State expressed disappointment, highlighted the need for more decisive action. Incremental is not required. Transformative is what we need, is what a demand of small island state. Then incremental progress. So critics acknowledge the arrangement as a step forward, but fell short of necessary urgency. So it is insufficient. Incremental progress. Then geopolitical and economic interest. Saudi Arabia, its position, see, it is supported by the Arab group and the LMDC group, opposed a fossil fuel phase out, arguing it was not essential for meeting 1.5 degree target, Celsius target achievability. So Saudi Arabia did not accept for it. It opposed. IPCC report says or emphasized emission reduction, not phase out. They asked for a emission reduction, but they didn't ask for phasing out completely. Okay. Then there is some controversy. COP28 president. So Sultan Al Jaber faced controversy over leaked comments questioning the science linking fossil fuel phase out to climate targets. So this is the controversy. His comments on fossil fuels and climate relation, that was a controversy. Then we'll see tripling renewable energy capacity. This is one of the outcome of COP28, right? We'll see in depth now. Global target renewable energy increased to 11,000 gigawatt by 2030. That is a target. Energy efficiency gains from 2% to 4% annually by 2030. Ambitious target and commitments. Diverse responsibilities there. Not every country required to triple capacity. See, the terms are repeating. Diverse responsibility, or we have differentiated responsibility, right? Absence in key pledges. India stance did not sign global renewable and energy efficiency pledge. We didn't sign that. Okay. So India's position and achievement, now we have to understand. So if you see, we have to talk on different points. One is renewable energy, contradictions and challenges, coal dependency, policy and planning discrepancies. Policy and planning discrepancies, there is a difference, right? Climate action tracker assessment and overall implications we have to understand in point of India or India's position and achievements. So if you see renewable energy front runner, global ranking 4th globally in 2022. India is 4th globally in 2022 in renewable energy. Investment growth rising to $380 billion by 2024. Investment is also good, right? So solar energy investment in India reached $310 billion in dollars in 2023 and are expected to grow to $380 billion in 2024. So if you see next one, we have a national electricity plan also. So it projects an increase in solar and wind energy production to 35% by 2032. Okay. So from 10.6% in 2022, it's 10.6% in 2022, but we had a 35% increase, okay, from 10%. International Solar Alliance, if you see, co-launched with France at COP28. India launched, right? It's a joint initiative of India and France. So that is reflecting the India's commitment to promote renewable energy. Solar Alliance, very important scheme, and even National Electricity Plan. Then updated NDCs, right? 50% non-fossil fuels power by 2030. We will kind of reduce, okay? Next we have contradiction and challenges. So we have contradiction and challenges, that is energy mix. If you see current energy mix, despite achievements, India continues to rely heavily on fossil fuels. We are having 50% of non-fossil fuel power by 2030. That is our target. However, we still depend on fossil fuels. That is a contradiction. And also, if you see renewable energy, we have 12.38% decrease in 2023. It has been dropped, okay. Electricity production, predominantly it is thermal based. So these are some of the contradiction, okay. Then we have a coal dependency also, right. So we'll see about it. If you see in coal dependency, what it is, electricity production in 2022, fossil fuels accounted for 77% of India's electricity. So 77% is from fossil fuels, with coal at 74%, okay. So mostly it is of coal used. Then we have IEA projections, that is International Energy Agency's projection, calls for coal phase out by 2030. What is that? International Energy Agency. That is net zero emission scenario suggests the need to eliminate subcritical coal facilities by 2030. Okay. Next we have policy and planning discrepancies. Renewable focus. Strategic shift towards the renewables. Okay, strategic shift is there. So if you see, so National Electricity Plan, under that renewable focus, outline a strategic shift towards renewable up to 26, 27 and beyond. So that is one. So then we have coal capacity anticipates a 150% increase in additional coal capacity in latter half of the decade from 9.4 gigawatt to 25.5 gigawatt. So you just note like this. Coal increase, plan for 150% rise in coal capacity actually. So see, one side we are talking about renewable, another side we are talking about coal. This is where the policy and planning difference is there. Then we see climate action tracker assessment. So if it is like climate target labeled as a highly insufficient, that is insufficient targets, describes India's climate target and policies as highly insufficient, noting that emissions are expected to climb past 2030 under current policies. So it is insufficient. Our climate targets are insufficient and it is going to rise. Emissions are going to rise. That's the indication. Overall implication, if you see, it is a complex trajectory is there. Energy trajectory strives for a renewable with ongoing coal. It is like combined, complex one it is. Goal alignment faces challenges in meeting climate goal by 2070. So there are complications. Now we see about phasing out of a coal. So these are what? These are key outcomes of a COP28, right? One such is phase down of a coal. Agreement overview, if you see, methane focus. Target substantial reduction by 2030. Methane should be reduced. Methane potency, second most prevalent, because it is second most prevalent in greenhouse gases after carbon dioxide, right? So we have to reduce. Challenges and opposition is source. It is from agriculture and livestock. So how can we kind of completely stop? It's difficult. India's position, it opposes mandatory methane cuts. So we are not accepting mandatory methane cut because agriculture is main for us. Agreement flexibility. Target. There is no specific target has been given for the reduction and there is only voluntary commitments. 100 countries are already pledged for 30% reduction by 2030. India didn't. We are opposing actually. So then there is one fund also established, that is loss and damage fund. What it is, we already seen in the terms. What is loss and damage fund? So if we are not able to adopt also, then we go for loss and damage, right? So that fund is there. COP28 in L&D, parties acknowledge the importance of addressing loss and damage due to climate change. So also they discussed on focusing on loss and damage. Okay. So next we see loss and damage fund at COP28. Total initial funding is estimated at $800 million. Categories of loss and damage are two categories: economic loss and we have non-economic loss and damage, that is incalculable losses. So current and future loss and damage also are there. Vulnerable countries, 55 countries have suffered $255 to $25 billion, and also projected losses are more, like it is expected to reach $580 billion per year by 2030. So even operational loss and damage fund, operation of a loss and damage fund, World Bank will oversee. Which bank? World Bank. Loss and damage fund was announced in COP28. See, the loss and damage fund is global financial package to ensure the rescue and rehabilitation of countries which are facing like cascading effects of climate change. We already seen that. The term refers to compensation that rich nations whose industrial growth has resulted in global warming and driven the planet into climate crisis must pay the poor countries whose carbon footprint is low but are facing like brunt of rising sea level, floods, etc. For them, they have to pay. So parties acknowledge the importance of addressing loss and damage due to climate change, including both extreme weathers and slow onset events. So we are emphasizing now on the sustainable development. So now we will see the next one. So background, if you see COP 2019, in that also there was some points. So they discussed in COP 29 Warsaw, also COP 26 Glasgow, COP 27 Sharm el Sheikh Loss and Damage Fund. So now industrial era began in 1850. If you see, disrupting Earth's natural greenhouse gas production and absorption of mechanisms. Okay, so industrialization began in this era. Constraints, if you see, source and type funding, inadequate current funding, quantity of funding, no agreed definition on it. So what is loss and damage fund? No definite definition. Source and type of funding, we don't know. Inadequate current funding also, and quality of funds also not that much. Okay. So to say more about this, if you see COP 19 Warsaw, the concept of loss and damage was first formally discussed. So if there is any question, loss and damage fund first time introduced, discussed is in Warsaw, COP 19, during the 19th Conference of the Parties in Warsaw. As a result, the Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage was established. So it was like Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage to address the impact of climate change and go beyond the adaptation. Okay. Then COP 26, what happened in Glasgow during 21st COP. So 3-year task force was set up to explore and consider new funding arrangements. So in COP 27 again. So government also agreed to establish transitional committee to make recommendation how to operationalize both the new funding arrangement and the funding at COP 28 next year. So that was the thing. So now in COP 28 we kind of adapted. So if you see constraint, I told source and type of funding. One major constraint is determining the source of funding for this. Okay, identifying securing the adequate financial resource has been challenged. Okay, so like additionally the type of funding like grants or loans or insurance, what kind of funding should we give? Is it loan or a grant or an insurance? What kind of fund? So needs to be considered to ensure the most effective support. First we should decide what kind of funding or source of funding. Then we have inadequate current funding, right? So that is, so whatever available funds for loss and damage have been considered insufficient. Given the scale of problem, it is insufficient, not that much helpful. The expected loss of $435 billion by developing countries by 2030 ILS need for increased financial support. So it is not at all sufficient, inadequate. Then quantity of funds, if you see, while high income countries have pledged $300 million, this amount may not be sufficient to adequately address the need of affected countries. It is not sufficient. Inadequate funds and quantity of funds also, whatever we have, that is also not okay. So no agreed definition also. Impact, adaptation and vulnerability, loss and damage means different things to different groups. So what is it? We don't know. So that is a problem. So what is the way forward? Financialization of a key issues. What are the issues and how much finance? Transparent transfer of funds. Independent authority for fund auditing. There should be different authority which is independent. International collaboration definitely to address disagreements, and alternative financial mechanism also needed. Okay, these are some of the way forwards. Then if you see global goal on adaptation at COP 28. This is one more thing we should be learning now. So what is this? The goal has been a long-standing demand of developing countries, focusing on increased attention and resource mobilization for adaptation efforts. So it's a demand of developing countries. For what? For increased attention, for resource mobilization, for adaptation. Attention and resource is needed for this thing. Okay, origin, if you see, long standing from developing countries, focus on enhanced resource mobilization. We should have more resource for adaptation. So that is the one. The concept is global goal on adaptation at COP28. So that objective, if you see, so establish a common global goal on adaptation akin to the global goal mitigation. Okay, mirroring the mitigation goal, that is 1.5 degrees Celsius as threshold. Okay, you should not go beyond this. Then draft text on global goal on adaptation at COP28. So it focuses areas. What are the focusing areas? So focusing area, reducing climate induced water scarcity. One is on water scarcity. Making food and agriculture production climate resilient. We want climate resilient food or agriculture production. Strengthening the resilience against the climate related health impacts. One is food, health, and one more is what? Water. Food, water, health. That is the key focus areas. Water scarcity, food production, and health resilient. So resilient is the important keyword. Resilient is like coming again, like once you got impacted, but again you will heal and come back. That is resilience. Okay, country responsibilities, if you see, so it is risk assessment. Assess the vulnerability, adaptation plan should be there, and monitoring should happen. These are the country's responsibility. First assessment, then adopt, then monitor. Assess, adapt, and monitor. So what are the components include? So the components, if you see, assessment by 2030, impact, vulnerability, and risk. First assessment has to happen. Then planning by 2030, gender responsive should be there, participatory national plans should be there. Implementation by 2030, progress in national plans, and monitoring by 2030, evaluation and learning system. The same. These are the components. Criticism from developing countries. What is the criticism? We have disappointed, draft not meeting expectation. So whatever they drafted, no, it is not meeting the expectations actually. Developmental focus. Too developmental, lacking specific strategies. They are just saying developmental focus, but what is it? Specific target is not there. Then vague target, like insufficient focus on water, health, livelihood. So there is no definition or target. So that is one of the, like, these are the three criticisms. So challenges, if you see, in defining global adaptation goal, local nature. Adaptation benefits are localized. Complexity is there. Difficulty in setting the global goals. There is also complexity. So next step and future work should be 2-year work program should be there. That is develop indicators for adaptation progress. So there should be indicators. Okay. Previous agreement framework agreed at COP28 to finalize by COP26 by COP28. Concrete target should be there. Fixed target. Need for a precise target in adaptation areas. So these are some of the points for global goal on adaptation at COP28, which is a draft state yet. Okay. Next, if you see India's adaptation efforts and investment. India's adaptation efforts and investments. We'll see how we are doing. Current investment, if you see, in 2021-2022 expenditure, 13.35 lakh crore. That is 5.5% of GDP. If you can't remember everything, not required. Just remember 5.5% of GDP India has spent, okay, for adaptation. Future projections, rupees 57 lakh crores over next 7 years. We are trying for 57 lakh crores, which was just 13.35 lakh crores. So yeah, Then if you see assessment and scenarios, adaptation requirements, it is based on the business as usual scenarios. Now I want you to comment what is this business as usual scenario. So potential additional cost could rise by rupees 15.5 lakh crore if climate change damage escalates. Okay. So it is going to rise also. Importance of adaptation. Why is it important? Role in climate action, critical component alongside mitigation. So alongside mitigation, we have to adapt also. It is very important for climate action or to avoid the climate crisis. So if you see the activities, infrastructure projection, sea wall against rising sea level. That is one thing. So activities, agricultural resilience, temperature resilient crops are promoted. Emergency preparedness is there, like heat action plans, early warning system has to be adopted, and then disaster resilient, infrastructure for extreme weather. So infrastructure for extreme weather. Now I want you to practice this. Infrastructure, if you see, sea wall. Then agriculture resilience, temperature resilient crop. Emergency preparedness, early warning systems, heat action plans, etc. Disaster resilience, infrastructure for extreme weathers. Okay. Then there are economic and practical benefits also, which is cost effective, prevent greater losses. So if you can do these actions, you can prevent the greater actions which will spend more. Right. Long term gains also will be there by reducing the future disaster expenses, ensuring economic stability. So next we have linking climate action with nature conservation at COP28. So they linked climate action which will be in return conserving the nature also. How did they link and what was the scenario? We'll see. Recognition and momentum. Triple crisis, climate, biodiversity and pollution. So actually we have to recognize that momentum. Okay, there is triple crisis concept. What is this? Whenever climate change, biodiversity also affects and also pollution takes place, or pollution is affecting biodiversity and climate change. These are triple crisis. Remember this. You can easily mention anywhere. Triple crisis. You can say BPC or BCP. B, C and then P comes. Okay. What is the biodiversity, climate and pollution? BCP. Like DCP, we have BCP here. Global stock take. Already we've seen global stock take. So ecosystem integration by 2025 should be there. That is the plan. Key decision and pledges they have taken. Ecosystem conservation enhances climate goals. So if you are conserving your ecosystem, automatically your climate change will be controlled. How? See, if you are conserving your ecosystem, you are growing your trees, you are not doing deforestation, carbon sink will be improved. So in return, you will be reducing the greenhouse gases, and then climate change also reduced. This is how it is. Okay. Deforestation goal. So eliminate by 2030. We have to see the same point. Support and investment. Support needs. Finance, technology and capacity has to be met. These are the support needs. And knowledge use, science and indigenous insights. Not only science but also indigenous insights also to be taken care. This is very important point. You note this. I will again ask this to repeat. Science and indigenous knowledge is required. Nature-based solution. Best solution is nature-based. Recognition. Key to climate mitigation. It is a key to climate mitigation. Nature-based solution. That is the biodiversity alignment, 30 cross 30 land and ocean protection. So land and ocean protection should be happening under biodiversity alignment. Also ramping up practical climate solution at COP28. So practical climate solutions like climate action plan or global climate action space, launch of the 2030 climate solutions roadmap by the high level champion. So is one of the thing. And if you see major announcements, UAE climate and health declaration happened. COP28 UAE declaration on agriculture. See, UAE declared on climate and health declaration. Agriculture also, and methane finance sprint. So those are about COP28. Till here we have completed. So what all we have completed, we'll just see once. First we understood what is climate change. We understood what are the important terms. So after important terms, we also gone through COP28. So how we started, I asked you to have a brush up on that concept and what is global stock take. Also COP28 we have seen 8 outcomes, and for 8 outcomes at least 2 outcomes we studied in depth. That is what is the tripling renewable energy capacity, what are the financial lacking, and also phase down of coal. India is not ready yet, and also loss and damage fund. About this, how it has begun in the COP16 Warsaw. Those things we studied, and then also draft of a global goal on adaptation at COP28. Then India's adaptation efforts also we have seen an investment as well. Then linking climate change and how you can link climate change and nature to conserve complete nature as well as reduce the climate change. That is where we ended up. Okay. So these are some of the points to discuss, and yeah, we are done. So next class we will be starting with our economic survey 2023-24 and also India and climate change. We'll continue. Later also we will be seeing COP28 points. So that's all for today. We'll catch up tomorrow.